Doing a deal with the DUP. Agreement is likely tomorrow to prop up a Tory minority government.
What's your price?
Arlene Foster met Theresa May in Downing Street with a list of demands for their support.
Bringing stability to the UK government in and around issues around Brexit, obviously around counter-terrorism, and then doing what's right for Northern Ireland in respect of economic matters.
Former Prime Minister John Major says any deal could look like cash for votes. And in the Commons, Jeremy Corbyn mocked Theresa May.
I'm sure we all look forward to welcoming the Queen's speech just as soon as the coalition of chaos has been negotiated.
Also tonight, more expensive summer holidays and food force inflation to a 4-year high. Decision delayed. European judges give themselves a week to decide the fate of baby Charlie Gard. And surviving Jaws, the American tourist who lost an arm fighting off a shark.
I remember thinking, this is not the end for me. I'm not going to die here. He's not going to take my life.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. Theresa May and the Democratic Unionists inched closer towards a deal today. But as they did so, there was a warning that it could threaten Northern Ireland's fragile peace. The former Prime Minister, Sir John Major, said he was concerned, wary and dubious about any agreement with the DUP. The party's leader, though, told ITV News she just wants her nation to get what she called its fair share of trade and investment. From Westminster, here's our political correspondent, Carl Dinnan.
650 MPs started work today, but right now, these 10 are the most important.
Are we looking at the real government?
The Democratic Unionists hold the keys to a parliamentary majority. So their leader, Arlene Foster, and Commons leader, Nigel Dodds, were welcomed into Downing Street to negotiate with the Prime Minister.
What price to keep Mrs May in power?
During a break in negotiations, Mrs Foster told ITV News what issues were on the table.
It won't surprise anyone that we're talking about matters that pertain, of course, to the nation generally, bringing stability to the UK government in and around issues around Brexit, obviously around counter-terrorism, and then doing what's right for Northern Ireland in respect of economic matters.
Do you expect at the end of this process that there will be more spending on projects in Northern Ireland?
Well, certainly we're looking at how we can enable Northern Ireland to become economically prosperous, to make sure that Northern Ireland gets its fair share in relation to trade and in relation to investment.
Does that fair share mean a bit more?
No, but in order to do that, we have to deal with the legacy issues that we have in relation to our economy, in terms of infrastructure.
The Prime Minister had broken off talks this afternoon for the return of Parliament and the election, unopposed, of the Speaker.
On behalf of the whole House, may I congratulate you on your re-election. At least someone got a landslide.
The Prime Minister was not only self-mocking, she was also contrite.
There are parts of our country that remain divided. Divided between young and old, rich and poor, those for whom the future offers a sense of opportunity, and those for whom it brings worry and concern. Some people blame politics for these divisions, or say there is too much politics. But politics can be an incredible force for good.
The Labour leader agreed, albeit in a more jubilant tone.
Democracy is a wondrous thing and can throw up some very unexpected results. And I'm sure we all look forward to welcoming the Queen's speech just as soon as the coalition of chaos has been negotiated.
But it wasn't just Labour attacking the DUP talks. Sir John Major, who knows a bit about Northern Ireland and slim majorities, also sought to undermine them.
I am concerned about the deal. I am wary about it. I am dubious about it, both for peace process reasons, but also for other reasons as well. A fundamental part of that peace process is that the UK government needs to be impartial.
Before returning to negotiations, Arlene Foster brushed that aside.
And there are politics going on within the Conservative Party, so I leave that matter to the Conservative Party to deal with.
And she said concerns about her party's approach to gay marriage had been overblown.
And there's been a lot of hyperbole talked about our position in relation to the gay community. Much of it is complete and utter nonsense, I have to say. We take a particular view in relation to the definition of marriage. That does not mean in any one way that we are homophobic.
But those criticisms will continue from the Prime Minister's opponents as she seeks DUP help to establish a government that is stable, if not strong. Now, negotiations are still continuing this evening, but I understand it's really a matter of a few working groups looking into the details. The Prime Minister herself has travelled to Paris to meet President Macron, and sources are telling me they expect this deal to be wrapped up probably by tomorrow, so long as those details don't get in the way. Details do have a habit of getting in the way, but so long as they don't, there should be a government tomorrow that Theresa May says she can rely on.
Kay Caldinan and Downing Street, thank you. Millions of Britons will be feeling the squeeze as the cost of living jumped to a 4-year high. The latest figures show inflation rose even higher last month, fuelled by more costly package holidays and children's clothes. And as our consumer editor Chris Choi reports, wages simply aren't keeping pace.
Whether the cost of travel, clothes or food, it seems prices are rising wherever you look. The official figure is a 2.9% overall increase for the last year. Heading off from Liverpool's airport today, these holidaymakers found they can't get away from rising costs.
Most, if you like, ordinary folk, they just they have to question every move they make, whether they, can we afford this?
What's affecting the holiday plans of millions is that the pound isn't going nearly as far as it used to. It's impacting on travel costs and currency conversion, just one aspect of a financial squeeze, now set to get worse.
Inflation has risen from 2.7% to 2.9%, the highest in around 4 years. Package holidays, confectionery and children's clothes were among costs rising the most. Meanwhile, wages were up by only 2.1% in the 3 months to March, and consumer spending down by 1.9% in the same period. As we rein in spending, sales are hit at factories like this car component maker in Birmingham. Here, employees already facing higher bills now have lower incomes as working hours are reduced.
Food and stuff like that, well, all that's going up the prices of the stuff, and you have to find somewhere cheaper to go, and you just got to watch your pennies.
And for shoppers, this rise in costs is far from over.
Well, we certainly haven't seen the worst of inflation yet. It's likely to peak later this year, probably between 3 and 4%.
Spreading through our spending is the impact of a falling pound sparked by the Brexit vote, with yet more financial pressure ahead. Chris Choi, ITV News.
The parents of desperately ill Charlie Gard have been given some last-minute hope in their fight to take him abroad for treatment. The European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg says it will decide next week on the fate of the baby after doctors appealed for permission to withdraw his life support. Sejal Karia is at Great Ormond Street Hospital where Charlie is being treated. And Sejal, how have Charlie's parents reacted?
Well, Mary, they face an anxious wait here at Great Ormond Street Hospital where baby Charlie is being treated. But it will be 3 judges at the European Court of Human Rights that will decide his fate. That is where his life is in their hands. It is they that will decide whether the machine that is keeping him alive should be switched off. A decision that was due by midnight tonight, but that has now been postponed until Monday. 10-month-old Charlie has a rare genetic disease that has left him with brain damage. His doctors say that he cannot see, he cannot hear, eat or swallow, and that he should be allowed to die with dignity. But his parents, Mum Connie and Dad Chris, are fighting to keep him alive so that they can send him to America for treatment. A struggle that's taken them all the way to Strasbourg because They have lost every legal battle in this country. This is now their last hope, but it is these 3 judges that will now decide baby Charlie's fate.
Sergio Caria, thank you. Now, more details of how 5 of the 8 victims died in the London Bridge terror attack have emerged as inquests were opened into their deaths. The mother of one of the victims, the Australian nanny Sarah Zelenak, was among those in court. The coroner said the 3 terrorists had stabbed people in the neck, back and chest. Geraint Vincent reports.
The facts surrounding a terrorist outrage are being collected at London Bridge, and the last moments of innocent lives are being officially recorded. Sarah Zelenak was a 21-year-old Australian working in London as an au pair. Her mother Julie came to court to hear how Sarah died of a stab wound to her neck. All our thoughts and condolences are with you, the coroner told her. The preliminary findings of the inquests mark out a trail of terror. Ignacio Echeverria, a Spanish banker working in London, was stabbed in the back on London Bridge. Kirsty Bowden, an Australian nurse who ran to the scene to try to help the injured, was herself stabbed in the chest and died very close to Southwark Cathedral. The killers then moved down to Borough Market, where they inflicted fatal knife wounds on Sébastien Boulanger, a chef from France, and James McMullen, the only British victim. This was also where they attacked Sarah Zelenak.
The hearing took place just a few hundred yards from where the victims died. Here at Borough Market, they're getting ready to open their doors for the first time since the attack. Tomorrow morning, traders will observe a minute's silence.
So normality returns here, but not for everyone. As the coroner said today, for a parent to hear details in a courtroom of their child's death is one of the most horrible things. Geraint Vincent, ITV News.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News, surviving a shark attack, how a dream holiday turned into a fight for survival.
I was face to face with a shark, and he had my whole arm in his mouth, and he was just sitting there like looking at me.
That incredible story and more after the break. Join me then. Hello and welcome back. 2 teenage girls who tortured a vulnerable woman to death led chaotic lives and were known to social services for drinking and drug taking. A review into the murder of Angela Wrightson in Hartlepool 3 years ago found multiple failings by agencies, but it concluded that the 39-year-old's death could not have been prevented. Damon Green reports.
Angela Wrightson was vulnerable from her youth. Mentally ill, addicted to alcohol and living alone, she was an easy target for cruel and ruthless people. Her family fears she won't be the last to lose her life.
Whether you're rich, whether you're poor, this can happen to anybody. You can get exploited by anybody, and this needs to stop. And vulnerable people are the most exploited.
In December 2014, 2 teenage girls came to Angela's home in Hartlepool and persuaded her, as others regularly did, to go to the shop to buy them alcohol. When she returned home, the 2 girls, aged 13 and 14, seen here on CCTV, beat her to death. They'd absconded from a children's home and called police to report themselves missing and demand a ride home. In the 3 years prior to her death, police logged 472 incidents reported by Angela and her neighbours. In the weeks before her murder, the older girl who attacked her had violently assaulted 3 members of staff at her children's home. She was due to be assessed the day she was arrested, but authorities concluded that Angela's death could neither have been predicted or prevented. They also say regulations meant staff were unable to stop the girls leaving the children's home whenever they liked.
Ultimately, the guidelines say you cannot lock the doors.
So a children's home can't keep children like this off the streets?
Well, ultimately, if the behaviour gets so bad, you can apply for what's called a secure order. You can only apply for a secure order if you believe that the child is either a threat to themselves or another person. With the benefit of hindsight, obviously it was the case that these children were a threat to somebody else.
Those teenage girls are now serving sentences for murder, but Angela's family say others abused and exploited her and are just as guilty.
Because we know what you did to her, and we'll never forget you, and we'll never forgive you for it, and we will always know what you put Angie through.
Social services say they've changed the way they deal with vulnerable people, but for Angela, it's too late. Damon Green, ITV News, in Hartlepool.
1 in 6 children in England has missed out on their first choice of secondary school, the highest level since 2010. Those in the North East were most likely to get their first choice and those in London least likely. The local government association has called for more places to be created. And Spanish prosecutors have filed a lawsuit against Cristiano Ronaldo for allegedly defrauding authorities of almost 15 million euros in tax. Ronaldo denies the accusations. Now, mobile phone users are being urged to check their bills after new laws came into force this week, banning roaming charges across the EU. Now, although the changes could benefit everyone, some could still face unexpected costs. And our business editor, Joel Hills, joins me now. OK, so explain, why is it coming to an end and why could we still be forced to pay up?
Well, it's an end to roaming charges from tomorrow, Mary. In theory, any calls, texts, data streaming, video streaming, whatever, sending a picture, whatever it is you want to do, it should cost the same in every country in the EU as it does in the UK, only which the Consumer Group says in some cases it won't. And it says, remember, these do not affect the cost of texts and calls from the UK to the EU. They will still get charged, and some of the charges are really quite eye-popping. Call from the UK to Spain costs 9 pence a minute, according to giffgaff. O2 charges £1.50 a minute, which also points out if you basically exceed your data and call allowance abroad, you'll still get charged. Charges vary. And mobile providers define roaming territories differently. Vodafone, for example, is the only provider that includes Turkey in the bundle. So the advice is look through your contract, know what you're paying, make sure you shop around, consider switching and use Wi-Fi whenever possible. Roaming charges, of course, abolished by the European Union.
OK. Joel, thank you. And you can visit our website to get all you need to know about the changes to roaming charges. And finally, a really remarkable story of a young mother who somehow managed to remain calm as a shark bit off her arm. Tiffany Johnson was snorkelling in the Bahamas when she was attacked, but she didn't panic. And she says she's now just grateful to be alive, as Martha Fairley reports.
Just 11 days ago, Tiffany Johnson and her husband James were enjoying the last stop on a week-long cruise in the Bahamas. But their water sports trip off Paradise Island was about to turn into a nightmare. Tiffany had been in the water for 20 minutes snorkelling near a reef when she realised something was wrong.
It honestly felt like I had bumped into something. And so I wasn't in fear or shock or anything. I just kind of turned casually to see what I bumped into. And when I turned, I was face to face with a shark. And he had my whole arm in his mouth. And he was just sitting there, like, looking at me and waiting for me to make a move.
As she tried to escape, the shark hung on.
I went to pull my arm back, and that's when he clamped down, and we started to, struggle. And there was a lot of thrashing, and I don't even know what I did in that time.
The shark took part of Tiffany's right arm, but throughout the attack she believed she would live.
I had this supernatural strength, God-given strength, that just rose up from inside of me. And I remember thinking, this is not the end for me. I'm not going to die here. He's not going to take my life.
Tiffany's now recovering at home in North Carolina with her 3 children, a shark attack survivor who knows just how lucky she is to be alive. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
Right, well, that is all for now. Tom Bradbury will be here with news at 10. But from me and all the team, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.